Hey guys, Angus here. Today we have the video review of the AGM Sten MKII Airsoft AEG. Let's start off this review by going over your gun's packaging. When you purchase the gun from AirsoftStation.com for about $165, link down below in the description, this is the box your gun will come in. As you can see, it's just a plain cardboard box with a large white sticker. When you take the box top off, this is most of what you should see. As you can see, everything is packaged very nicely inside that thick black styrofoam. Being that I've had this gun for about 3 years, I don't exactly have everything that originally came with the gun. However, some of the things you'll get in the box include your AGM Sten user's manual. This isn't really a manual, it's merely a sheet of paper that really doesn't tell you anything. It has instructions in the back about the battery compartment and fixing the magazine well. However, they're extremely vague and really don't help you at all. Then you'll have a small type trickle charger, an 8.4 volt 1100 milliamp small type stick type battery, a 50-55 round MP40 magazine, a very short dejamming rod, and of course your AGM Sten MKII Airsoft AEG itself. Now hopping straight into the review here, let's cover this gun's external and internal construction. Now externally, the gun is almost 100% composed of a very solid metal component. There are only two real plastic pieces associated with the gun, and those include your 55 round MP40 magazine. This magazine is composed of a fairly solid plastic. However, I could see if you were to drop this from a significant height onto a hard surface, say you're playing CQB or an urban combat situation, your mag actually falls at a window of a second floor building onto concrete. I could definitely see this thing shattering, splintering, however you want to say it. But otherwise, when in the gun, it feels perfectly fine. The other plastic piece on this gun is currently not attached. It would be the orange tip that is included when you buy this gun inside the United States. Your gun will come with a blaze orange tip. It's simply a small piece of plastic glued onto the end of the barrel, which, quick note, is not threaded. Otherwise, the rest of the gun is composed of metal. It's a very solid gun, feels great externally, nothing feels cheap, everything's solid, no real wiggle except for a little bit in the stock. So overall, externally a very solid weapon, save those two plastic pieces. Internally, the weapon does use a metal version 7 gearbox. AGM internals, they're decent internals. I've never really had too much trouble with them. However, I will make the statement that internally, there's a lot of gunk in that gearbox. So the first thing you do, you might want to re-grease or re-lube the internals. But otherwise, fairly sound metal version 7 gearbox. So internal, pretty nice. External, definitely a solid weapon. Alright, now before we get into some of the actual features of the weapon, one of the most important things I need to discuss is the gun's battery space, which is also one of the most annoying things about this gun in my opinion. In order to access your battery space, first you need to unscrew the large screw holding the stock to the back of the gun, and also unscrew the small screw holding the rear sight to the weapon. Once this is done, your battery compartment and small type connector will be revealed. Now originally the Sten came with a small 7.4 volt LiPo that was small enough to fit in the hollow compartment just above the gun's gearbox and in front of the rear sight. However, they now switched the Sten to include an 8.4 volt 1100 milliamp stick type battery. Where is that stick type battery housed? Well, inside the gun's hollow metal stock. This stock is spacious enough to house at least a 9.6 volt stick type, maybe a 10.8 volt. I really don't know as I've never tried. However, the battery space is an extreme con because first it's a fight to get the battery inside the hollow stock. Then getting it out is even harder, being that the only exposed part when the battery's in there is its wires, and that's what you have to tug on to remove it. So my recommendation, I'd take a stick type battery, put it in there, and simply charge it inside there from now on, so you don't have to run the risk of damaging the battery each time you have to yank it out. Putting the stock back on is something so difficult I'm not going to demonstrate in this video in order to save you guys 10 minutes. What you basically do is have to connect the small type connectors, hide the connectors inside the hollow compartment where the rear sight is, and then carefully slide the stock on so that way none of the wires get pinched. If they get pinched, the gun will not shoot. Battery space on this gun, the biggest con out of everything. Now, as you may have noticed when we were talking about the gun's packaging, the weapon does come with its magwell facing down, like an MP40. You cannot use the gun this way, being the magazine cannot lock in and it won't be able to feed BBs into the gun. However, when the magwell is down, you are able to adjust your hop-up, which is located just inside that very small hole. In order to adjust your hop-up, you simply take the included Allen key, stick it in there, and twist to turn the hop up or down. Overall, this hop-up unit's fairly effective and really does allow the BBs to reach far out there. After you finish adjusting your hop-up, you can turn the magazine well to its proper position simply by pulling down on this spring and turning the mag well like so, so it's on the left side of the gun and the gun is capable of being used. Now, speaking of the weapon's magazine well, one of the most important features of this gun would be that thing that goes inside of it, the gun's magazine. In order to eject the mag, you simply want to push down on the mag release located on top of the magazine well. When you push it in, give the mag a slight tug and it will come out like so. Now the Sten uses a plastic, as I stated earlier, 50 to 55 round MP40 style magazine. There is no special Sten mag for this weapon, it just uses your MP40 magazines. Now the included mag is a low capacity magazine holding 50 to 55 rounds. What that means is that there's no wheel to wind at the bottom. You simply take your speed loader and load it up with the predetermined amount of BBs. One thing I've noticed about this thing, it doesn't have many feeding issues when in the gun. It's when you're loading it with a speed loader that it tends to regurgitate all the BBs everywhere, or even if you slightly tap it, it tends to spew the BBs everywhere. So it's not actually feeding in the gun that's bad, it's just loading it up is very, very annoying. The spring is extremely sensitive inside the magazine. Overall, the magazine is fairly nice quality. There is a large Made in China marking on the bottom. I really don't care for that. I always think it looks ugly when they put it on there. But hey, nothing you can do. You can always just rub it off if it really was that big of a deal to you. The biggest con about these mags is that when you have a gun shooting only full auto at a fairly high rate of fire, 50 to 55 rounds go by fast. Luckily, there are King Arms magazines available now for this gun that have 110 round capacities, so you do get a higher mag capacity. However, another con with these things is that you really need some special webbing or gear in order to house them. I found that World War II era webbing works perfectly, being that, hey, it was designed for these guns, or if you wanted to run a modern kit, just P90 mag pouches will actually hold these magazines fairly well. So overall, the mag feeds well in the gun, however its biggest cons are its lower capacity and its size. Kind of hard to fit in your regular M4 or M16 style mag pouches. In order to slide the mag back in, simply take it so that the BB port is facing towards the rear of the weapon and slide it in like so. When you hear that click, the mag's in and you're ready to go. Now obviously your AGM Sten MKII is fitted with iron sights, however they're nothing special at all. However, they're what you're stuck with, being that you cannot mount a scope on this weapon. Your rear sight is simply a small metal piece with a small hole in it, so you would line it up with your front sight, which is equally as spectacular, just being a small sight post. These sights aren't adjustable. What they really are just small pieces of metal attached to a larger hunk of metal. So they're really nothing special. However, like I said, they're what you're stuck with, and they're actually very accurate to the gun. Now the AGM Sten MKII is a full auto only weapon. There is no semi-automatic function on this gun. Unfortunately, there's also no safety. I really don't like that because, well, it's a safety hazard. Without a safety, this gun can go off anytime the battery is in. And this trigger is very sensitive. You can just slightly tap it and the weapon will go off. My recommendation, keep a barrel plug on this thing anytime the battery is plugged in and the gun is capable of firing. Being there's no safety, I really wouldn't recommend this if you're an immature player who's always going to be just spraying with the gun even when you're off the field. Another thing I want to discuss very, very quickly is that this gun has a heat shield for a reason. You're supposed to hold the weapon like so. Please don't try and be Call of Duty-like and hold the gun like this, causing the weapon to misfeed. Also, if you're going to buy this gun, it's a Sten. Please don't call it a Type 100. Alright, so we've been out in the field for a little bit, we've covered the Sten's handful of features, and it's time to go ahead and get into the final conclusion of this review. Now me personally, I'll be honest, I'm going to be a little bit biased towards the Sten because it's my own personal gun, and I really like it a lot, being that I've had the opportunity to use it over the 2.5 years that I've owned the weapon. Major cons of the gun that I've never gotten used to, though, are the fact that, well, the magazine, it's kind of annoying that you need to purchase some new gear or some new pouches in order to be able to hold them due to their length. Also, I really strongly hate the battery space on this gun. I've strongly considered several times just buying a small LiPo to be stored up here as opposed to forcing my stick battery into a very confined hollow stock and then having to tug it out and possibly break the wires when I do that. I also don't care for the lack of safety on the gun, being that if this was in the hands of a very immature player who's just out in the field, hey Timmy, and just blows him in the eye with this gun, not very safe, and therefore I would not recommend this for anyone who's going to be immature on the airsoft field. Otherwise, this gun has quite a few pros to it. Number one, I love World War II weapons. If you're a World War II enthusiast, this would be a really cool gun to set up a British World War II kit with. Also, it's a unique gun. I know a fellow player of Airsoft with us who uses this weapon just with a modern kit, and it's a unique weapon. Also, I do enjoy the fact that it has a nice rate of fire on full auto, and overall it has a very, very nice performance. It's also a very solid gun, being constructed almost entirely out of metal. Who would I recommend this gun for? As I stated, World War II enthusiasts or people who are looking for unique guns. Also, more mature players, but be warned, it's not a gun for everyone. Just because, well, you're going to need to buy plenty of mags, plenty of mag pouches or different gear, and also it is kind of uncomfortable until you get used to holding it properly and really get used to that wire stock in your shoulder. One other recommendation I could see this for, besides being used in the field, which is more so what it's designed for, CQB. It has a low enough FPS, a good rate of fire, and it's fairly compact. So if you're at a CQB field, you want to try this thing out, maybe it might work well for CQB, but hey, I've never used it. So with that being said, guys, this has been Deathcore Airsoft's review of the AGM Sten MKII. It's a cool gun. World War II enthusiast, you may want to pick this thing up.